Wakanda Forever Black Panther 2's second weekend box office is looking like it's going to shape up to turn out to be exactly as I projected, with a huge 68% drop, just like Thor 4 and Doctor Strange 2. What's going on with this movie? Why has it hit this brick wall just like the other two when so many thought that this was going to be the grand finale that Disney was hoping for the Marvel Phase 4? Well, in a recent article with Variety magazine, showrunner Tony Gilroy for the most recent Disney Plus Disney Star Wars Lucasfilm entry, Andor, might have stumbled across an answer. We're going to talk about that. Let's get into it. Renegade Online. Well, welcome back. Another great day here at Valliant Renegade. It's great to see all of you out there once again. And if you are like one of the many folks watching this video not yet subscribed to the channel, please take a moment, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, share this sucker out on the social medias, and of course, please do leave a comment before you head out the door today. We got a lot to talk about, and a big Sunday afternoon live show, Sunday at 5 o'clock U.S. Central Standard Time, right here on Valliant Renegade. Of course, the show is Renegade Online. Hope to be joined once again by my partner in crime, WDW Pro from thatparkplace.com, so stay tuned for that. We have a lot to discuss. He's got a lot of updates from our contacts in the toy industry that kind of relate to some of the topics that we're going to talk about today as to why these properties with Disney are not just failing in the Nielsen ratings and failing in the box office to turn a profit, as in the case, perhaps, as it looks at this point, with Wakanda Forever Black Panther 2, but the ancillary sales like merchandising and toys are going downhill as well. So here's an article yesterday from our friends John Trent and Bounding Into Comics. Andor showrunner admits the show is, quote, chasing the audience after expecting to have a, quote, gigantic instantaneous audience. Now, what is Tony Gilroy talking about? Well, Tony Gilroy, once again, is the showrunner for the Disney Lucasfilm Star Wars Disney Plus show, Andor. And of course, we have been tracking these Nielsen ratings in recent weeks. And just as a reminder, the most recent week from Nielsen looks something like this. As you can see, right down at the bottom, you can find Andor all the way down at number 9 of the original programming, and it doesn't even make the top 10 in the overall chart. Andor here at number 9 on the original programming has been struggling since its release, and nothing much has changed, and one could easily argue, based on the downward trajectory of the numbers, that even as the series matured, it seems like the audience for it has shrunk. Now, I'm going to say very clearly once again that if you're enjoying Andor, then good for you. I'm not here to take that away from anybody. We're just looking at it purely from a numbers perspective. Is this a profitable endeavor for the Walt Disney Company, especially considering what is surely somewhere in the neighborhood of a $100+ million production budget for a show of this scale? Now, we've seen comments recently from folks like David Zaslav over at Warner Media talking about how he's going to be far more judicious in his application of capital expenditures, or CapEx, when it comes to building new properties, building new shows, because as Warner Media and David Zaslav discovered, they were getting much better returns from older catalog titles than they were for spending millions upon millions, if not tens of million dollars, on new shows that they were dropping onto the HBO Max service. Don't be surprised if we see a similar shift with the Walt Disney Company in the coming months and years, especially after the Disney Company recently announced hiring freezes and layoffs and CapEx cutbacks. But getting back to the article, let's see exactly what Tony Gilroy had to say. Quote, I'm very pleased with what they did. The materials are great. I think I was surprised. I thought the show would go the other way, that we would have this gigantic instantaneous audience that would just be everywhere, but that it would take forever for non-quote Star Wars people or critics or my cohort of friends to get involved in this show. But the opposite happened. We ended up with all of this critical praise, all of this deep appreciation and understanding from really surprising numbers of sources, but we're chasing the audience. And Mr. Gilroy is correct. As we previously showed you on the screen, the Nielsen numbers don't lie. It has one of the worst performances of any show, any big budget show, from one of the two major IPs that have populated the Disney Plus channel. You're talking about Marvel and you're talking about Star Wars. And as I remind folks, Mandalorian is still the king of watch when it comes to Disney Plus. The problem is that when Mando Season 1 concluded, there were only about 15 to 20 million US subscribers on Disney Plus. When Mando Season 2 completed, there was close to 30 million. Now, recently, with shows like The Book of Boba Fett and now Andor, we're seeing audiences that are actually stagnating or shrinking, but there's over 45 million subscribers in the US right now on Disney Plus. That means the overall percentages of the people signing up for the service are just not watching these shows. They're not going anywhere. Now, hopefully, Mando Season 3 in a few months will buck that trend, but that's not even guaranteed. But we do know what's going to happen with Wakanda Forever because the numbers are coming in for the second weekend, and it's not good. And it seems like the Walt Disney Company, just as Tony Gilroy accidentally let slip out that they are chasing the audience for Andor, it seems that Marvel itself is also chasing the audience, and that bears out by the numbers. Earlier this morning, we got Friday box office updates from the numbers. Black Panther Wakanda Forever was routed to the tune of 80% Friday over Friday, meaning that the second Friday was 80% less than the opening Friday. Now, a lot of folks out there will think, well, sure, opening weekend's always much bigger. And of course, you would be correct. The problem is when you see drop-offs to this scale into the second weekend, it portends some bad news. And it's frankly bad news that has trended almost with perfect accuracy for the last two Marvel Cinematic Universe films, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness and Thor Love and Thunder. Both saw nearly 80% tanks on the second Friday, and those perfectly matched up with each of those prior two entries having tanks of 68% for the second weekend. All movies will reduce their exposure in the second weekend in terms of ticket sales, short of them starting out with a very limited release and then going wide release in the second, third, or fourth weekend. We have seen that on occasion, and that's usually with smaller films. But films at the scale, the $250 million production budget scale of a Marvel cinematic title, get wide releases globally in every market instantaneously all at the same time. So there's no deviation from that standpoint. What we're looking at here is a big drop-off. If you want to see something that has a healthy drop-off, go back and look at the first Black Panther movie from 2018. So again, if we look at the chart from the numbers and use the box office tab, we can scroll down quickly and see. Look at the daily box office performance, a 33% hold on Monday, a 62% fall off from the first to the second Friday. 62, not 80. And by the way, look at the second weekend fall off, a very commendable 45% drop. That is a very strong hold on the box office for a movie like that. A 41% drop off from there into the third weekend. Look at what we're talking about this weekend for Black Panther. Black Panther got $111 million on its second weekend, $66 million in its third weekend. In other words, Wakanda Forever is basically going to skip the entire second weekend from Black Panther in 2018 and go to the third weekend, even below potentially the third weekend, because I think the second weekend numbers for Wakanda Forever are going to be $58 million, which is about $8 million less than the original Black Panther's third weekend. And that's what I mean by skipping the entire second weekend. There's no hold here for Wakanda Forever. It is legging out almost identically to Thor, Love and Thunder, and to Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. And if chasing the audience here in the US and Canada wasn't hard enough at this point for the Walt Disney Company and Marvel Studios in terms of Wakanda Forever, it's not going to get much better overseas. You see, this weekend, the World Cup begins, and that is a huge international draw, meaning that the Sunday box office for pretty much every film is going to be largely off the table. And not to mention that the first Black Panther movie did not haul in that great of an international box office. That was definitely much more of a movie that was a bigger hit here in the States than internationally. That is typically the opposite for every other Marvel film, and I don't think Wakanda Forever obviously is going to be any different. I think at this point, the international box office will be very lucky to make its way to a final closing figure of $350 million, and the domestic box office will be probably pretty lucky to work its way out to around $400 million right around the same place as Doctor Strange. And that means that this movie is indeed going to close out with somewhere between $750 and $800 million. Probably slightly better than Thor Love and Thunder, but way under Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, exactly as I predicted before this film even opened. When it comes to profitability for this movie, that's not going to bode very well. This movie really needs to get to a bare minimum of $750 million to even have a chance of thinking about breaking even, potentially as high as $800 million, depending on exactly what that marketing expenditure was. Probably between $125 and $150 million at least, on top of the $250 million production budget. Now, in addition to that, I want to remind folks that AMC Theaters, the largest exhibitioner here in the U.S. with international ties and several hundreds of international theater chains, they have made it very clear these films are paid in the aggregate. And that rate here in the U.S. is in the low 50s. Black Panther 2 Wakanda Forever is probably going to enjoy somewhere around a 52 to 54% payout stateside, but on the international side, they're only receiving around 40 to 42%. And that is because of international laws, international taxes, and of course, FX drag, foreign currency exchange drag, because the dollar has strengthened against most foreign currencies, meaning those foreign ticket sales in foreign ticket dollars are bringing in fewer US dollars when they're traded back into the US. All of this portends a problem for Disney, while the merchandise still sits on the shelves for these and are probably already being sent to Ollie's and Hudson's discount treasure hunt. Stay tuned and make sure you catch the live show on Sundays at 5 o'clock Central Standard Time here in the U.S. We hope to see you there. And until next time, take care.